The late afternoon sun stretched across the suburban neighborhood, painting the neat rows of identical houses in warm shades of orange and gold. A moving truck sat in front of one of the larger homes, its back open, revealing furniture carefully wrapped in blankets and boxes labeled in black marker. The man who owned the house, Marcus, was busy carrying a heavy box toward the truck, his shirt damp with sweat, his face calm but focused. After years of dealing with his overbearing HOA, he had finally decided it was time to move on. The constant harassment, the endless fines for things as trivial as leaving his trash can out an extra hour, and the surveillance-like patrols had worn him down. Today was supposed to be about closure, about starting fresh somewhere the wall wouldn't be breathing down his neck. But of course, the neighborhood's self-proclaimed enforcer had noticed. Everyone called her HOA Karen, because of the way she treated people as if she were the law itself. She never actually held any official position of authority in the community, at least nothing more than being the HOA president, but she wielded her title like a weapon. She strutted around as if she owned every square inch of the subdivision, constantly inserting herself into her neighbors' lives. And Marcus had been her favorite target since the day he moved in. From across the street, Karen stood with her arms folded, her lips curled in disapproval. She had already complained about the unauthorized moving truck parked on the street, muttering to neighbors about how it was blocking the neighborhood's aesthetic. Now, as she watched Marcus carry another box, her irritation boiled over. She stormed across the street, her phone clutched in one hand, ready to escalate things in the only way she knew how, by calling the cops. "You can't just do this without notifying the HOA," she snapped, raising her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "This move hasn't been approved. You're violating protocol." Marcus paused, resting the box against his knee. He looked at her with the same calm expression he had worn for years whenever she showed up to nag him about his lawn or decorations. "Karen, I don't need the HOA's approval to move out of my own house. I've already sold the place. The paperwork's done. I'm just loading up," she scoffed, shaking her head. "That's not how it works. We have procedures, we have standards, and you can't just haul in some truck and start disrupting the neighborhood. I've already documented your violations." She held up her phone, pretending to scroll through imaginary evidence. "I warned you before. If you don't comply, I'll have no choice but to call the authorities." Marcus sighed, knowing where this was headed. He had hoped, for once, she might let something go, but she thrived on confrontation. Without another word, he lifted the box and placed it neatly inside the moving truck. That silence set her off even more. She jabbed at her phone screen and began dialing, announcing loudly, "Fine. If you won't listen, maybe the police will make you cooperate." She stepped back, her voice growing shrill as she spoke into the phone. "Yes, officer. I need to report a suspicious person. He's loading things into a truck. No, he doesn't belong here. I think he's stealing furniture." Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. She wasn't just being petty now, she was lying. She had crossed the line from harassment into something much uglier. Neighbors began peeking through blinds and stepping out onto porches, drawn by the commotion. Some shook their heads, already used to Karen's antics, but others whispered uneasily at the accusation. Within minutes, the sound of sirens echoed faintly down the street, growing louder as they approached. Karen's smug grin widened. She folded her arms with satisfaction, confident that she had finally caught Marcus in a trap he couldn't escape. "You're about to learn you can't just ignore the law," she sneered. Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned casually against the side of the moving truck, his face unreadable. When the squad car pulled up, two officers stepped out, their hands resting near their belts as they scanned the scene. Before they could say a word, Karen hurried over, pointing dramatically at Marcus. "That's him. He's stealing from the house. I told you, he doesn't belong here." The officers exchanged a glance, then looked toward Marcus. But before they could approach, another car pulled up quietly behind them, a sleek black sedan. The driver's side door opened, and out stepped a young man in a sharp suit, his movements precise and confident. His resemblance to Marcus was clear, the same eyes, the same calm demeanor. Karen turned, momentarily confused. "And who are you supposed to be?" "Another one of his helpers. You can't just park here without clearance." The young man ignored her and walked straight toward the officers, flashing a badge in the sunlight. "Detective Johnson, with the county sheriff's department. I got a call that my father was being harassed while moving out of his own home." The shift in atmosphere was instant. The officers straightened, recognizing the authority in his tone and the validity of the badge. Karen's triumphant smirk faltered, her eyes darting nervously between the detective and Marcus. Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying weight. "Officers, this is my son. He's been keeping tabs on what's been going on here for a while." The detective turned toward Karen, his expression sharp now. "Ma'am, did you just knowingly file a false report claiming this homeowner was stealing from his own property?" Karen's mouth opened and closed as she struggled for words. "And no, I was just. There was a moving truck, and it looked suspicious, and—" "That's not what you told dispatch," the detective cut in firmly. He gestured to the officers. "You can check the call log. She described him as a suspicious person stealing furniture. That's a deliberate false report." Karen's face turned red, a mix of outrage and panic. "You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. I was just protecting the neighborhood." But the detective didn't flinch. He nodded to the officers, who began stepping closer to Karen. "Being an HOA president doesn't put you above the law. Filing a false police report is a crime. Harassing residents and weaponizing the police is a serious matter." Karen sputtered, her words dissolving into stammers as the officers moved to detain her. Neighbors who had gathered nearby began murmuring, some even pulling out phones to record. The woman who had spent years lording over everyone, handing out fines and threats, was suddenly powerless. And as the cuffs clicked around her wrists, Marcus finally allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. After years of enduring her relentless harassment, justice had arrived, delivered not by shouting or fighting back, but by the quiet strength of a son who knew the law better than she ever would. Karen's shrill protests echoed through the quiet neighborhood as the officers guided her toward the squad car. She twisted in their grip, struggling as though her position on the HOA board should have granted her immunity. "You can't do this to me. I'm the president of this community. I make the rules here," she wailed, her voice cracking under the pressure of humiliation. Neighbors who had once avoided her gaze were now openly filming, their phones raised high. Some of them smirked, whispering among themselves. For years, Karen had fined them for flowers planted outside regulation beds, for garden gnomes that weren't aesthetic, for trash cans set out 5 minutes too early. She had written letters dripping with condescension and had turned herself into an unchallenged tyrant. Now, with her wrists bound in steel, she no longer looked like a leader. She looked like exactly what she was, a bully exposed. Marcus leaned against the truck, watching quietly, his arms folded. There was no gloating in his face, just a calm satisfaction that justice had finally caught up. His son, Detective Johnson, stayed nearby, keeping the officers focused on procedure. "Get her in the car, read her rights, and make sure the paperwork on the false report is airtight," he instructed. His commanding presence left no room for hesitation. Karen thrashed, trying to pivot the situation in her favor. "This is harassment. You're targeting me because I care about my neighborhood. Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed to keep this place in order?" Her voice rose higher, desperate. "They'll thank me for this. You'll see." The detective tilted his head, his expression sharp. "From what I'm hearing, ma'am, the only thing your neighbors are thanking you for right now is finally being held accountable." He nodded toward the growing crowd, who began clapping and murmuring in agreement. The noise hit Karen harder than the cuffs. Her carefully maintained illusion of power was crumbling right before her eyes. As the patrol car door slammed shut, muffling her outbursts, the officers stepped back. One of them turned to Marcus and his son. "We'll take her downtown, start processing the charge. Do you want to pursue a restraining order as well?" Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, glancing at the house he was leaving behind. "I don't think I'll need it. I'm moving out today. I just wanted to do it in peace. But if she tries anything else, yeah, I'll file." The detective clapped a reassuring hand on his father's shoulder. "Don't worry, I'll make sure this sticks. She's not just going to walk away from this like she has before." The officers drove off with Karen inside, her face pressed angrily against the window. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with gossip and relief. Some even approached Marcus, offering words of support. About time someone stood up to her, one neighbor muttered. Another added, she fined me $300 because my kids left their bikes on the lawn for an hour. This is karma. Marcus nodded politely, though he wasn't interested in vindication from those who had once stood silently while Karen tormented him. What mattered was that his son had been there, and that for once, the law had sided with fairness instead of intimidation. Back inside the house, Marcus continued packing, but his son lingered, his investigative instincts still burning. Dad, he said, lowering his voice, I've been digging into complaints filed in this neighborhood. Karen's name pops up a lot, not just as the complainant, but sometimes as the one mishandling funds or intimidating homeowners into silence. Marcus raised an eyebrow. So this isn't the first time she's crossed the line. Not even close, the detective replied. She's been abusing her position for years. I've got statements from people who were too scared to challenge her. Some say she threatened liens that weren't real. Others say she pocketed HOA money for maintenance projects that never happened. This false report may be just the beginning. For a moment, Marcus let that sink in. He had always suspected Karen's zeal for power wasn't just about appearances, it was about control, and maybe greed. Now it seemed his son was about to unravel all of it. As the evening deepened, Karen sat in a holding cell downtown, her hair disheveled, her once pristine blouse wrinkled. She had demanded a phone call, only to be met with the same indifferent tone she had used on countless neighbors, you'll get your turn. For the first time, she was powerless, reduced to waiting while the system she had weaponized against others processed her like any other offender. Back in the neighborhood, the HOA board gathered in emergency session. News of Karen's arrest had spread like wildfire, and board members who had once clung to her authority were now scrambling to distance themselves. We can't be associated with this, one muttered. If the county investigates, we'll all be dragged down. Another chimed in nervously, what about the money? She was handling most of the funds. If they audit us, his words trailed off, dread clear in his voice. By morning, the residents awoke to emails from the HOA announcing Karen's suspension pending legal matters. For the first time in years, people felt a breath of freedom. The board was fractured, and without Karen's iron grip, the atmosphere shifted. Some even walked over to Marcus's driveway with coffee and donuts, offering genuine thanks for unintentionally sparking her downfall. But Marcus didn't dwell on it. Box by box, he finished loading the truck. His son stayed until the last one was secured, then closed the latch firmly. You're free of this place, Dad, he said with quiet pride. But I'm not done with her. If what I'm uncovering is true, Karen might not just be facing a false report charge. She could be looking at fraud, embezzlement, even intimidation charges. She's built her little empire on fear, and now it's crumbling. Marcus gave him a long look, equal parts gratitude and fatherly concern. Just be careful, people like her don't give up easily. The detective smirked faintly. That's the thing, Dad. She already lost. The badge only made it official. As Marcus climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine, the truck rumbled to life. He glanced in the mirror at the house one last time, not with regret, but with relief. The walls that had once felt like a cage were behind him now. Ahead lay a future unchained from Karen's grip, a future where the HOA couldn't dictate his every move. His son followed behind in the black sedan, a silent escort ensuring the last leg of his father's time in the neighborhood went smoothly. Neighbors waved as the convoy rolled out, their faces carrying a mixture of curiosity and admiration. For them, it was the end of an era, and perhaps the beginning of something better. And for Karen, locked in a cell and stewing in humiliation, it was only the beginning of her reckoning. Because this time, she hadn't just tangled with a homeowner. She had picked a fight with the law itself.